podcast.
Yes, alive and well. What's up, people? Welcome to Creative Theory Podcast, show that brings you conversations with visual artists about what their day-to-day is like, how they got to where they got, their goals, their thoughts on what's happening in the art world, and a lot more. The show is meant to be as much of a learning resource on how to navigate your life as an artist, but also just a place for fun and thought-provoking conversations. Coming at you from Vancouver, BC on Save on Radio. I got a really special guest in the studio today. He's a concept artist, designer, super smart guy. José Arias, what's up, man?
Hey, man, how you doing?
Thanks for, I'm doing good. Thanks for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Oh, that's a very cool intro. You honor me. Thank you so much.
Cheers. I should have mentioned that you're also a really hardworking guy. Your studies that you've been posting on Instagram are looking really cool, and the fact that you're posting so often.
Oh yeah, I love doing studies. I think they're so important to get better.
But best tool.
I enjoy them. I enjoy doing studies a lot. So whenever I have time, which is usually like during lunch, I just do a 30-minute quick study in Instagram and.
It is inspiring just finding that time to practice, right?
Yeah, it's very liberating. You know, like to just have that little space for yourself and just practice. But I find practice, I don't know why, I find it so relaxing. Mm-hmm. Some people might not, but I do. Do you? When you're doing studies,
I want to, and I should do more, right? Like, but the fact also that it's speed paintings, do you find value in that? The fact that they're quick studies?
Yeah. I mean, time limit is, I mean, putting limits to what you're doing to your art sometimes enhances creativity. Mm-hmm. So if you have 30 minutes, what can I do in 30 minutes? I don't want to waste them. So let's see if I can render this view or this painting in this amount of time, and then you get better. I mean, speed.
Yeah, that's so true, especially when there's no limitations that are put on you during your free time.
Yeah,
you got to find something to there's got to be a quote that I don't remember, how like limitations create better art. There's got to be something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, but limitation, I think it's important. So that that small amount of time that I have to make paintings, I think, I mean, it's relaxing, but in a way, it motivates me to let's see if we can make this quick study of mountains or whatever. And then I find out that I kind of can, And
is there a reason why you go with environments recently?
I don't. Yeah, actually, I found this really cool group in Facebook. I think it's Virtual Plein Air.
Yeah,
it's amazing. And essentially, I mean, since I'm at the studio and I'm having lunch or working, and I just have a 1 hour, what I do is just you go to Google Maps and Google Earth, and you find a spot that you like, and then you draw it, you paint from it. Ideally, you don't color pick because you're using Photoshop. Sometimes you can't.
That's a big one, yeah. If you want to learn color, I mean, if you really want to force yourself to do it, you can't.
You don't color pick. Sometimes I cheat, and that's...
Okay, and for people who don't work digitally, color picking, like, I don't know, use Photoshop, you actually just, click on a color and then you get it, rather than seeing it and then trying to guess what the color is the same way you would work with, if you're working with acrylics. Yeah. You can't just, pick that color from the photo or life.
Yeah, and for the industry, it's super useful because you need that color if you're working, if you're creating a product. Mm-hmm. So you need that tool. That tool is super helpful. But if you want to learn and you want to really do studies and you're working in Photoshop, don't color pick. It will take longer, but you will understand how color and light works way better.
It's a crutch. I mean, that's all it is.
Exactly. Yeah. But that's been doing those, and it's been fun.
What about professional work? You're now working on movies. How's that been going?
Yeah. So last time we spoke, you asked me about if I felt the difference between working in animation in TV and animation for film, and I said, nah, I haven't felt it yet. But then this week I did, because we have way more time and we have to invest more and dedicate a bit more for what we're painting or building or designing. So specifically the film I'm working on, we are using very realistic textures. So in a lot of films, even if it's animation, if you look at the texture work, it's sometimes very realistic. Mm-hmm. It's in their own style, but you can see the pores in the skin and everything, and it's all hand painted. I think that's amazing because that's
totally.
It requires a lot of investment and
yeah,
dedication.
and time. And so would you say that that is really the defining like defining difference? I don't
It's
know how
one
to say
of-
it, between the TV animation and feature film animation.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's one of the defining differences between both, that we have time. But I haven't worked for a long time in this film,
Mm-hmm.
so I can't really say for experience like, oh, it's this and this and this that differentiates both. But
Yeah.
for sure, and also film pays better.
That's
That's
it.
also another
Right.
defining
Yeah,
feature,
well,
which is
one
great.
thing you learn as you get into this, I guess any field, but games, animation. One thing you find: the bigger the budget, the more you get paid.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. So film generally has much more budget.
Which is why, right? The timeline is longer. You get to spend a lot more time on your piece
Yeah.
of art. It just looks more refined. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Refining stuff.
But it's but then you mentioned putting obstacles for yourself to create better art, and that's why I guess when you work in TV, when you only have like a week to create something rather than a month, sometimes I wonder if those constraints allow you to make better choices.
Yeah, I think if you're in the studio, I think those constraints might be maybe not in time,
Mm-hmm.
unless you're behind. But they give you other constraints. Like for example, for the film that we're making, those constraints for me appear in the form of the style of that film.
Mm-hmm.
I believe so, that my art director liked my work and my portfolio because of my rendering style. But I'm having a lot of trouble with the style that they want to do, say, of the characters.
Mhm.
And well, essentially, I'm not a character designer.
You do both.
I try to, yeah, but I wouldn't call myself a character designer compared to other people that
Mhm.
that can do really good characters, like yourself.
Uh,
Or Francine
Thanks, man.
Delgado is a really good friend
Mhm.
of
Yeah.
both of us. And
Hello.
hi, Fran. And she's a really, really good character designer. And I know that I've spoken with her about doing environments, and I don't think she enjoys doing the environments because it's something that she finds hard to do. But which is something that I should point out. She is a very good artist, even when
Yeah.
she does the environments, but she doesn't enjoy them. So
Mhm.
she doesn't call herself
I guess it's one of those things
environmental
where
designer.
it's good to know, but then in the future, if you're specialized and you just don't enjoy one side of it, you're just able to pick a field that you just want to create in, or just that one area, and keep going in it, right?
Yeah, and but it also comes down to getting out of your bubble. So
Mhm.
yeah, sure, you might really love doing characters, but it's always important to now and then try something else.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think standing out is really important. You want to stand out. You want to develop your own style.
Yeah.
And you can't do that if you just go work and then go home and watch TV. You have to work on your own thing, and it's really hard to do that. To come back from drawing 8 hours a day and then you just want to do something else, perhaps read
course.
or do whatever. But it's important that you develop your own style. I think you have no problem with that.
I do. I think I do.
But you already have, you're already used to going back home and maybe painting a little bit and spending a little bit of time for yourself, for your art. I think that's vital for every artist out there, because if not, you will always paint the way that companies want you to paint.
Yeah, it's like having your own personality.
Yeah.
Try not to forget. Yeah, that's true. Always struggle with finding time for that, but I do find it really important
Yeah.
to do stuff for yourself. And honestly, probably all of the artists that I've asked about this, they often say that the most fun art that they can create, whether it's they're digital artists or they're just fine artists or whatever realm, but it's always personal work that
Yes.
feels most fulfilling just to your soul.
At least to you and me,
I think most people, honestly, and I would love to continue asking this question as people get on the show.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see someone that's like, no, I just like doing what other people-"
stuff.
Yeah.
You never know. Maybe that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, every artist that I know in person, they have their own style, and they always feel very comfortable and very happy to do their own work. And I think that's something that you might forget. Sometimes I forget that I do this because I love it.
Mhm.
And that's why
Yeah.
these studies began, because I love like the paint, the brush stroke. I feel so good when I'm doing it. It's and you enjoy it, and I don't worry if it's not looking good. I don't care at that time. I just paint, and that's something that's so easy to forget when you're working for, when you're doing this for a living.
Very true. And I think this feeling you're describing is when you see people who are, I don't like the description, but you'll understand, like hobby artist, people who just actually do it without any pressures, just to enjoy it.
Yeah.
And like, so you're trying to harness that feeling, but you're in a situation where you have to perform and you have to do well so you get paid for it. So the pressures
For
are
sure.
on. So it's like you're saying, you kind of forget about the fact that, hey, it's still art, making
Yeah.
cool stuff. And
Yeah.
but one thing that's curious to know is about you. You keep, your mind is very much in the commercial animation realm when speaking about just art in general. You know what I mean?
Right now, like what we're in this conversation.
I guess
you mean, or-
as we're chatting, because that seems to be the context. What about how interested are you in the maybe gallery work? Oils, acrylics, that kind of side.
Yeah, I think this is something that I wanted to talk to you about, and I've been thinking about this week.
Mhm.
Man, it's a hardcore topic. Okay,
Let's get into
How do-
hardcore
how-
topics.
how do we start? Okay, so I studied contemporary art
Good.
in Simon Fraser University,
Yes.
and I hated it. I hated it with all my guts. And while I was there, it wasn't a kind of hate that is like, I don't care about this. It was a kind of hate that's like, no, this has to change. I disagree with all these people are talking about. I hate it because I mean, they teach you the development and history of how contemporary came to be.
Yeah.
And I used to love my 19th century history of art classes,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
those were awesome. And I believe that's one of the last periods in art where art had like a say in the daily lives of people in society.
What do you mean by that? Or
So
explain.
art would be a critique of the world around you,
Mm.
and it still is. You can any contemporary artist will tell me that's exactly what we're doing. But I feel that today, if you go into a gallery, a renowned gallery of contemporary art, there's a disconnect between what people know and interact and the social critique that the art wants to make. Because people sometimes don't how many times have people gone into an art show, contemporary art show, that look at a chair that is there and it's supposed to be an art piece, and they're like, I don't understand this. Or there is, and I know that some people do get something out of it, especially if you study contemporary art.
Yes.
I can go into an art gallery of contemporary art and, oh, okay, maybe the artist wanted to say this, or maybe he didn't want to say anything at all, or whatever. But I had a lot of problems and got into a lot of trouble with my professors and teachers, because I would find that some pieces were ridiculous.
And
That
I
we were
totally
literally
see that, especially
you know?
where you ended up. The fact, the kind of art that you do just shows me. I can't believe the fact that you even ended up in a contemporary art school.
Oh man,
How did that happen?
my parents wanted me to study to get a degree. It's
Okay.
not just like a diploma and whatever, just get a degree, a proper university degree. And I thought, and when I went into the university
Mhm.
on my first year, I believe I didn't have a lot of good orientation, so I figured, okay, this is the only way to go forward, and this is
No.
yeah, and I personally dislike a lot of contemporary art, and I have countless essays from my school years where I just bash like crazy, and I have my sources, and I would say, for example, muralists
Yeah.
and the muralist movement in Mexico. It was a big thing. So when the muralist movement began, I can't remember his name, but the person in charge of the government branch of culture in Mexico decided that he would bring a lot of muralist artists to paint in government buildings in Mexico. So he contacted Diego Rivera, who was studying
Oh, yeah, he's very
in the U.S., I think, right at that moment, or in Europe. I'm not very sure about this. But anyways, he grabbed as many artists, poets, writers, and musicians and brought them to Mexico City. And he said, okay, you muralists, you paint all these government buildings, but I want you to give them a historical context and a cultural context, and paint a scene from our history. So if you travel to Mexico City, you can find, theaters, government buildings, palaces, museums that have these beautiful art pieces. And wherever you're walking throughout the city, you see culture. It's there. It's it's connecting you
sounds
with the
amazing.
painting.
Yeah.
I think that was a great move, and it was a way to tell history to the people who live there through a painting. I think that's amazing
In
And
comparison to
in comparison to a piece of wood lying on the ground. I know, maybe I'm wrong, and you guys can bash me all you want. I don't care.
all the people who love contemporary art are just yelling at us right now.
What the hell's wrong with
Dude,
this guy?
you don't get it. You're just not
Yeah.
cultured, man.
Yeah, it's probably that.
But yeah, actually, no, go ahead. Yeah.
But yeah, that's what I mean. Like, like there used to be a time where there was. I mean, and you can still go and enjoy that piece of work, and you can feel in touch with the history of that place and the culture of that place, and I feel that nowadays there's a lot of disconnect between the contemporary artists who are in their little world and in their little bubble, and there's no connection between the people that can go into an art gallery and try and relate to the piece.
In your opinion, when you see a piece and it doesn't explain right away what it is about, unless you read it like a paragraph about it, does it mean it failed?
That is a very
Because before I
hard
continue,
question.
I'll say, at least in the commercial art side, whether you're an illustrator, you're doing publication work, whether you're creating for an animation game, you name it. If it doesn't read, you failed. And this is why I really like being in both worlds, doing fine art, but then doing this commercial side, because at least there is rules. There's rules are, hey, you can't draw. Well, it's not working. If this doesn't tell the story that it's supposed to, then it's not working. And I do like it because then there's something to strive on and towards. And then, for example, like you're saying, okay, you walk into a gallery, there's a piece of wood laying there, and if you don't get it, people are gonna hate us, but this is my opinion. I don't know. If you don't get it, then unless
Then
maybe
you
you
don't
understand the context, I definitely agree. There's value in it, and there's value once you understand the piece of role, and that's why it seems like the write up and the ideas are an integral part of it, rather than if you see a piece by Landecker or, for example, American painter painted a bunch of illustrations for magazines and newspapers. What's his name? Like classic American. Rockwell, Norman Rockwell.
Yeah,
you see a Norman Rockwell piece, you get it. He's incredibly. He's incredible at storytelling. So when you see a piece like that, it's like, whoa, I get it right away, and it can be a complex story. And once again, on the other hand, we got the contemporary art. Man, maybe we're just not qualified.
but I think we are. Like I understand that there's a very, very big difference between commercial art and illustration work and the design that we do for TV and film and and fine art. There's a huge gap. But whatever you're doing, if you want people to think about something or criticize something of our society, I think you have to, at least at some level, be able to communicate that through your work. So, okay, for example, in a 19th century painting class, we were taught how painters would use their technique, their very realist technique, to tell you a story through their painting.
Did you actually take that class?
Yeah, I think it was
Wow.
called. It was.
I'm very impressed.
It was my favorite class, I believe.
That sounds really cool.
yeah. But then we moved on to more contemporary, which was also interesting. Contemporary history of art, which was also really cool. But I was feeling like, what is going on with the development of, like, all these movements? Anyways, like the artists like Goya, for example, or any 19th century painter would, yes, be very skilled and would have a lot of ways to depict something. Oh man, I'm losing my train of thought. But he would use that skill and that painting to criticize the situation of his country or the political environment that they were talking about through their paintings. You can appreciate the painting itself, the technique, the skill, but you can still relate to the context of when they were painting.
So what you're saying, it has both, I guess, the context and the skill level.
Yeah, and I think that's really important if you want to put your piece in a gallery and criticize modern world.
Well, but clearly we know nothing, because what's being sold and what's leading the world is the contemporary art. And this is actually also a really tough qualification, because so much falls under that umbrella, because there's some really interesting pieces too, and I think people probably hating us. But actually, when I over the break, I traveled to Portugal, and as you know, like what you're talking about, the amount of beautiful fine art from like like 18th, 17th, 19th century that they have. It's so beautiful, incredible to see, and it's very overwhelming the amount of skill that you see there. Then I was surprised by an experience of going into a kind of modern art gallery after having been to, let's say, 5, 6 Renaissance medieval art galleries, and it was actually almost a breath of fresh air, which having that experience, it kind of made sense, or I understood a little bit more of a context why people even went into the contemporary or modern art or all of those, like, I guess, neo movements that were happening. And I appreciate, it's cool to know how they happen, and I think that probably makes more sense, and I imagine that's when you get it and maybe hate on it a little bit less of how those movements are created. And a lot of them were just counter movements to the art that you're describing, the visual representational work.
Okay, for me, skill is very important. I think it's essential. I really disagree with the fact that contemporary art allows anyone to become an artist and anything can be art. I think if everything is art, then nothing is. You know, it's you can't do that. In my personal opinion, I disagree completely. You have to have a certain degree of skill to transmit and your whatever your idea is. Now, the contemporary art movement developed from the First World War, because for them, for the artists that post World War I, were thinking, and all the intellectuals were thinking, how did all of our theories took us to a place where we killed so many of us, and we suffered so much. This has to change. All of our ideas and theories and thoughts led us to this. How is this possible? So there was a huge intellectual revolution in terms of literature, art.
Everything was
communism was born around that time. I mean, sure, before Marx and Engels were developing his theory, but it really takes off in Russia and China post World War I, or during World War I, actually, when Russia leaves the war, because they were like, how can our enlightened ideas lead us to such carnage? So there was this whole transformation and these movements of that they might have considered, oh wow, this really skillful art is taking us to this hellish way of killing each other. We have to change this. We have to deconstruct our entire society.
Which is also a movement.
Yes, deconstructivism, and it is born from the perils of that century.
Do you think we don't get it because we didn't experience that? Because I mean,
I think we don't get a lot of things because we haven't experienced, or we have been forgetting the lessons that last century taught us. In many senses.
I don't know. I wonder if people back then didn't get it either. It's it was a reactionary art created, but I don't know if people around them got as much either. But also, don't you think art, I don't know, did art lead to war? You know what I mean? I know there was that connection overall, like that the whole society was just got to this point and something was wrong, and so everyone was trying to do something completely different, like you're saying, in literature or art. Yeah,
for the intellectuals of that time that went on to fight in World War I and suffered and saw how much carnage we could cause, they were like, how can our ideas be so enlightened and still we are enduring this, horrible experience? So there was a trauma and yes, a reaction from them, and they had no, let's just scrap this because this is not working. Then of course, you have World War II and the Korean War and countless horrors from last century. But it was a reaction, and I feel that art should react to what is happening around the world. It shouldn't just be its own thing. I don't think that you should enter a gallery and be completely isolated from the world and just be like this bubble. What's the word? Quarantined from the world.
Because of that, the idea is to speak to people, and you're not succeeding in that way, then something is off.
If people are not getting it, if people are arriving at a place where the pieces are completely disconnected from what's going on in their lives, I think, yes, you have failed as an artist if your purpose was to use your art as a reflection of the world, which is,
that's the idea.
That's kind of what art is.
Fine art. because
Yeah.
we can get into
You
what
know,
we're making.
yeah,
How
I
does
mean,
that relate?
At least for me.
Yeah, no,
you know?
I'm totally with you. I completely on your side. And yeah, this is an interesting conversation that has no end and
Yeah.
only opinions. But I really do agree with you on that. Let's get back to you once again. That was a pretty deep dive. That was
Yeah,
cool.
that was a
We're all
deep
getting
dive
educated. So you're saying pressure from your parents, contemporary art, and you stuck through it. But it's interesting that you picked, the pressure from your parents to get a degree. You picked like a middle point, art, but kind of don't
Well,
get.
But I mean, I yes, I did struggle a lot intellectually. It was very hard for me to agree, or to more like disagree with all my profs and all the students that were super into it. And I know that they were enjoying it, and I know that they were diving into the topics and doing their pieces and their art. I was struggling so much through it, but in a way that led me to who I am and to do the things that I do right now. So I don't see it as a complete waste of my time. No, it definitely wasn't. It taught me so much.
Well, of course, and it's something that you and I talked about before, is what school can often do to you is just teach you how to learn, which is a really valuable skill.
Yeah, I took anthropology course
Yes.
because of SFU asks you to balance your education in some way, so you have to take classes to get credits, and you have to take classes outside your department. So I took a couple of anthropology courses and political science, and I was like, wow, why didn't I study this? This is so interesting. But it also taught me to read and research and delve into topics that contemporary art sometimes might not get into.
Mm-hmm.
So if I want to find out about the Neanderthal man, I can go now to a library, and they taught me the skills to learn for myself, and do it all by myself. I don't need to have a teacher. And yeah, I think that's important.
And you can do the same thing with visual art, any kind of skill,
yeah,
any medium.
Any topic. And I think, for example, here in Canada, it's amazing the accessibility that you have to information. You can go to a library, subscribe, and you can rent out equipment, videos, movies, music, audiobooks, instruments. Even if you want to learn how to play the clarinet, they'll do their best to do that.
There's no excuse. There's no more excuses.
And that's my point. There's no excuse to be uncultured here.
Yeah,
because you have all that access.
Lucky. Yeah.
Yes, where other countries, don't have that.
Mm-hmm. And actually, you bring me to a pretty good point. That's something I want to touch on. But before I get into that, actually, Jose and I recorded another chat and conversation we had. I think it's probably 40 minutes. So if you want to hear some bonus material, I would say there's probably going to be a link under this episode you can check out. And one thing that Jose and I talked about in that one is how art is an act of selfishness, and I thought it was a fascinating concept, which then, like, the act of creating it's very personal, although I can see how you can think or you can create it for someone else, but in the end you're feeding your soul, you could say. The purpose is to be better, which orients on you. But then again, most people, if you look at it that way, most people are quite selfish most of the time, you know what I mean, unless your job is a social worker, if you're helping people directly. But as an artist, you're not stuck, but your trajectory, although you're creating something for other people, you're like focusing on yourself. So I guess what I wanted to ask is, have you thought of how your art can give back to people, or how to make it so it's not just for yourself? Because it is like you mentioned before, it's a selfish pursuit to become a better artist.
Yeah, and I think it's a healthy selfish pursuit. But I do like that concept a lot too, because in the end you do it out of your own volition, and we really got into it because of our healthy selfishness and interest of liking art, and that's why I kind of feel a bit guilty of saying, what the hell is wrong with contemporary art? Because who am I to tell those people what is and what isn't art?
That's right. We know nothing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and who am I really? Who am I to tell them that what they're doing isn't art? And that's a big question in that area of study.
It's a very frustrating one too.
Yeah, because you really can't. I mean, if those guys want to just put dirt on chairs or do whatever, I don't like it, and I disagree.
Do that before someone steals your idea.
Yeah, I think it's probably been done. I'm pretty sure.
Jared and the share.
But yeah, I think the act of creating something is very private. It's a very personal thing. I mean, in fact, that's why I think I'm an illustrator and a designer instead of an animator, because I like that space and just doing my own thing in my own bubble.
Mm-hmm.
I'm complaining that people are in their own bubbles, but
But then, going back to the question, do you often think about how you can somehow give back or have your art create value for the society rather than just yourself?
Yeah, yes, I have, and I don't know how. I think first I have to be skilled enough to be able to communicate my ideas properly, like those 19th century painters.
They knew how to.
Yeah.
They knew how to tell a story. Yeah.
But then there's a difference between social art. You know what I mean? There's a lot of artists that are very engaged into social movements and criticizing whatever the government, the society.
Oh, like when it's doing commentary.
Yeah, a social commentary. But in a way, art can be a social commentary or a cultural commentary, and sometimes it can just be a reflection of yourself. And in a way, that's really cool, because then other people learn about other artists and other people by looking at their work.
But I wonder if there's other ways we can think about it. For example, we work at companies that do charity work, and you can get involved in that. One thing I've noticed, especially doing like physical paintings, oils, and in the fine art realm, there's often charity auctions or art auctions where the proceeds go to some sort of charities or local hospitals. So there's these other ways to somehow contribute to the society. So maybe it's just like finding those ways. But I do try to think about it quite a bit, because you and I I think we joked about that, how when we work nobody dies, but also when we work we're not building houses for people. So finding ways to give back to the society has to be maybe an abstract way.
Yeah, I think for me, a really great artist is someone who is skilled, who is educated and cultured, but who can also have a direct impact into society and how we live our lives through his work. I think that's really difficult. How does your painting make other people think? How does your sculpture or your poetry make other people feel differently and change the way that they go on about their lives? That's really hard to do. I don't know I don't think my work does that at all. I don't think I'm even close. But it would be cool to reach that point someday, totally. that your work changes how people view the world.
Because in a way that is an objective, right? You're creating to show someone how you see something or what your thoughts are.
Yeah. And I mean, it's your interpretation of the world in the end. It's how you see the world, and then you process it in your brain, and then you paint it, or you draw it, or you write about it.
And I imagine it's even harder today when the art is so accessible and there's so much of it. So to have that clear voice that is also carries weight and can actually, like you're saying, change someone's mind or idea of something, that's even more challenging.
It is because there's so much out there right now, and it's so easy to access. I mean, and you were telling me about this when we were looking at your Instagram account. You were saying, man, I follow so many artists, and sometimes it becomes a struggle to keep up. And I find it the same too. Like, oh man, there's all this art, and I don't have enough time to look at my Instagram, and it's just a app that shows you images. But I don't know, like 100 years ago or 200 years ago, we didn't have that much communication. So there was a bit more time to think about, life was a bit slower. So we didn't have all this accessibility and all these images pouring through our phones that we look at all day long.
And I remember reading about how going to a gallery or having a gallery event was such a huge deal. It was like going to see these days like a big Marvel movie or something like that. When it was an art show, it was a huge deal because they're not as often. There's no internet to look at paintings. So to see art was a huge deal rather than now. There's so many art shows happening, and how many people even know or care.
Yeah, and you you can just stay at home and learn about art through a screen.
Once again, through Instagram. Hey, what's up, everyone?
Yeah, which
so many good paintings.
In a way is really cool because you can just access everyone and almost everything with just the click of a button. But in another sense, it's scary because it can just lead to people just staying at home all day.
Yeah.
And it's a bit sad if you don't go to art shows and you just like, okay, for example, I downloaded this app called I think Google Culture or something like that, and you can visit galleries through your phone. Like if I can go visit El Prado Museum in Spain, in Madrid, through the app.
I gotta do that actually.
Yeah. And it's really, I thought, man, this is really cool. Like if I was a paraplegic and I could not move and travel and do so many things that I can't do right now, that would be amazing because that gives me access to the whole world.
Totally, and the intention is so pure and so good. It's just like you're saying, there's this flip side where you may just stay home now and not
that's a risk, you know. But I for example, I was reading a review of audiobooks a while ago, and this review was I think a Vietnam vet who was saying that he couldn't read very well because his eyesight was he was almost blind, but he was saying that audiobooks were wonderful because he could now listen to so many books that he had missed throughout his life. That it was this accessibility gave him so much stuff to read about and know about because of audiobooks. And podcasts are the same.
Totally.
You know, that's so amazing. Yeah, you know, the exchange of ideas is now easier than ever because you can just go into your podcasts app and just search about any topic that you want.
Again, there's so much value in that. And I guess if you're the kind of person who is gonna see, you go to that app and see a gallery on your phone or something like that, I imagine most likely you're probably gonna always see it in person. Especially for us as artists. I don't know about people who don't do art, but for us, seeing that Sargent painting up close and seeing the juicy brushstrokes, the photo on your phone or on a computer never does it. So
yeah, exactly. I agree completely with you. Especially because, for example, you're someone who loves to travel a lot, and
I try to. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and not everyone can just travel as much as they could, and it's hard. It takes money. It takes time, effort.
Sure.
Yeah. But I think it's worthwhile because you experience the world in so many different ways.
And for opening your mind and seeing how other people live, it's so valuable.
Yeah, it's vital, I think. And if you want to be a well-rounded person in terms of culture, it's important to travel.
And even more important as an artist to have just have more perspective.
Yeah, definitely. Like we enjoy taking our sketchbook with us and paint whenever we're traveling. I mean, it's hard because you're doing something else and maybe you're on a holiday or enjoying the sun or whatever, especially if you're from Vancouver. It's not very sunny here, but you know, it's almost hard to not take your sketchbook with you and try to, you know, draw whatever you're looking at. It's comforting to change views for a while.
And sometimes it's not, but it's also good. Sometimes it's not comforting to, you know, visit a certain place where it's not as easy, but the experience itself is great.
Yeah.
Or in the end, it will be no matter what. Once again, like we touched on that as well, but experiencing things that are not as pleasant is also a good experience.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's interesting and I guess it's not surprising, but a lot of artists try to paint from their dark side and not so happy experience. So it could be a driver as well.
Yeah.
So I guess man, I like these deep dives. It's good.
Yeah, man, these types.
What's your I guess we keep going. Do you have a long-term plan as far as, I don't want to call it career because it's art as a lifestyle for us at least. Yeah. Like you're saying, you go home, you paint, you go to work, you paint. But do you have a long-term plan or where this is going to go?
I would like to, you know, we've talked about living the dream as an artist. It's just,
which is what?
Paint whatever you want and get paid for it, you know, and it's literally whatever you want. No one tells you what to paint. That'd be awesome. But you know what I've always liked to do? I enjoy books a lot and reading and having a space to read. No. but I do. I think that for example, almost all my Christmas presents were books to other people because I enjoy sharing literature. So one of the things that I would always love to do eventually is to have my own space where I can paint and have a little like coffee shop where people can go in and have books
Oh,
for
wow.
people. That would be awesome, you know, and you have artists to paint there while you're reading and having your coffee. That would be amazing. And it's like a little like space for culture.
But it would be for everyone else to join in as well. You're going to open it to the public, or how are you going to do it?
Well, if I had millions of dollars, people donate, please.
But that's
like
actually
if-
the plan. You would want to have the social space.
Yes, I would love to. I would love to have like an area where you can invite an artist
Yeah.
and he can create in his own like space, and then have people watch him or her do his own thing.
So intrusive. Not everyone's going to like
I know, right? But I think okay, when I was a kid in Mexico, living in Mexico City, I remember that I was walking with my dad along the street, and we passed the studio of an artist, and there were a bunch of people just sitting there talking while he was painting an oil painting.
Mhm.
And I said, "Oh, that's so cool! Like, why are all these people in his house?" And he explained to me the concept of, inviting people over, and just have them in your studio or your house while you're painting, and they watch you paint. I mean, you obviously have to be really good and really pretty and really
entertaining,
famous, yeah. But that idea stuck to me. It's like, oh man, that would be so cool to have like a space where people can actually see the artist at work, and they can pick up a book or listen to music or have a coffee while you can see live art being painted, like going to a coffee shop that has a jazz band.
Yeah.
But imagine
I
that
really like-
with painting.
We
you
need
know,
that
or-
here in this city.
Yeah,
More
that'd
live
be so
music.
cool.
Yeah, just arts in general. Was
Yeah.
that I actually want to talk about that experience? Was that? Do you remember? Is that one of your earlier like exposures to art and wanting to do it? Like you're saying, seeing this in Mexico.
That was one of them. I used to also go to a place in Mexico City which is called Saturday's Bazaar in
Nice.
Spanish,
Cool.
and it's in a historical part of the city, and every Saturday we would go there, and there's a lot of craftsmanship and paintings, and you would see so many different styles of these guys and you could see the people painting.
That's cool.
As a kid, I was like, wow, that's so, I want to do this. I want to be here painting. And my parents were like, no, if you want to be an artist, you got to strive for more. Go to a gallery and be exposed there.
Don't be at a bazaar. Is that what they told you?
And I was like, but look, the culture is so accessible to people because you can talk to the artists. And we bought a bunch of paintings
Nice.
from that place. You can talk to them. You can ask them about their style. How did they do it? And it was all sort of styles, and you can still go. Like if we ever go to Mexico, I'm
That's
gonna
so
take
cool.
you there.
It's
Man.
still-
It's
up-
still there.
wow.
Every Saturday they set up shop, and a lot of restaurants open up in the morning, so you can go walking through all these streets, and it's one of like thousands of places where you can go and look at artisans and
Wow. Would you say
Artists.
art is, especially visual art, is a lot more supported in Mexico than it is here in Vancouver?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, and I miss that so much. And I'm not saying because there's not a lot of artists here. I mean, just before we started, you were mentioning that one of the problems that you won't have with this podcast is finding people to talk to,
Totally.
because there is
So
a
many
lot
good
of
artists
people.
here.
There's so many, and a lot of musicians as well. And I mean, I know that you're focusing only on fine art, but you won't have a problem. The problem is that there's not a particular space, or there are not enough spaces for us, like the rest of the people, to access. You were talking about this. You told me about this group called. They set up shop. You mentioned it. What's it
Yeah.
called? You know where a lot of concept artists gather.
Yeah. So a friend of ours, Pedro Amato, started, or
Yeah.
just recently started a design and concept art
What's-
club. You could say it's called Vault 100.
Yes.
So if you look it up, I don't know if he's gonna like the fact. I don't think he's gonna like the fact we're mentioning. More people are gonna come, but yeah,
Well,
we don't have enough spaces, like you're saying, for that. Or you notice galleries closing, but overall, yeah, there's that feeling of where do you go with it?
Yeah.
Actually, one thing, I don't have a mindset that like the city owes me something. I don't like feeling like that. But on the other hand, it does feel like if I'm creating work and I want to display it somewhere, it's a lot more of a challenge to find that. While it's interesting what you're saying about Mexico City, how it seems a lot more accessible, and people are always going to embrace it, I think.
Oh,
Like,
yeah,
I know
definitely.
people in Vancouver as well love art, but for whatever reason, whether it's price, different drinking laws, and I know they play into that
Yeah.
on like outside like street life, and I think
Also the weather,
the weather,
doesn't
you're
help.
right, rains a lot. So I guess a lot of it does take away from having spaces for art in whatever form it is, whether it's live music in a little cafe or.
But you know what? I think you're doing a great thing here. I think you're enriching those
I hope
spaces
so.
because this is a virtual space. This is a platform for other artists or everyone really to get in contact with these people, with more fine artists, and I think that is enriching already the local culture.
Well, thanks. That is actually the goal. It is realizing how many incredible artists are here, and for some reason they're not as well known.
Even between themselves,
Yeah,
you
even
know?
by the city or between themselves, or they're not well known in the world. While I think I told you this story when I went to, and maybe I shouldn't tell this story. Now I'm going to be bashing. When I went to, I'll try to be kind. But when I went to New York and I went to the Society of Illustrators, and they had art from, I think from Mocha event, which is I think it's a comic book art event, I think, from last year, and they had some of the better work displayed, and I thought this is as good, or in fact there's some people in Vancouver who are way better than this. Not to say that art wasn't great, like it was awesome, but I just see the amount of talent that is here that is not known, while there's these centers in the world where sometimes you have to go to get noticed or for whatever reason. But man, there's so many good artists, so I really hope that I really hope that I can contribute, even in the smallest way, but to bringing,
I think you are.
like bringing good artists here, which there's plenty of, to just chat, talk art, but also, yeah, I don't know, promote and spread the word and whatever we can do.
Yeah, and I think this is a great way to do it because we were talking about accessibility in art and with all the media that we have now. I think you're building a virtual space because we lack, those areas where we can interact with other artists, and I think that's a really good way to do it. This is amazing.
Well, thanks, and yeah, I'm glad we're talking about
We're doing this.
It's,
Yeah, and it's necessary. I mean, it enriches the culture of everyone. If you have places where people can see artists, and that's why my crazy idea of having like my own coffee shop where I can.
I love that idea.
Have
I really hope you do it.
Yeah,
you
that
can
would
do
be
it.
awesome.
I know Vancouver has very expensive real estate, but if not in Vancouver, you gotta
Yeah.
find a place, and I'll visit. I'll come and paint.
Oh man, it would be my honor. When I'm rich, I'll set it up.
You're gonna be rich. So let's get back to the bazaar. So since then, and then you saw the art, and was that the passion was created for visual art, or I get what I'm trying to ask is how you ended up to the point where you entered contemporary art school, or like how was the love for art created?
Well, my parents would always take me to galleries, and we would go to this bazaar almost every Saturday. And whenever I go back to Mexico, I go there
That's
a
very
lot,
cool.
because it became part of my day-to-day or
That's
week-to-week activities, and it's really hard to go to Mexico City and not interact with art. It's seriously, there's so many museums. I think it's the second city in the world with as many museums, with the most museums.
Wow.
In the city, which
I really have to go. That sounds incredible.
Yeah, and it became part of my life. So my parents would take me to these different galleries in the city. We would also, when we would travel to other countries, we would almost always go to an art gallery, even if it was a contemporary art gallery, and we would talk about it. We would be like, man, I don't like this piece, and why we don't like this? and they kind of got me into it. And I would always, one of my favorite activities as a child was just sit down and draw while my parents would cook or do whatever.
That's really cool, but you stuck with it, right? Well, I think a lot of people, kids especially, do drawing, and then for some reason some people maintain, while others don't.
Yeah.
Where I guess that's where the passion comes in, or interest, or support in your case. And I wonder how many people got into the art because, like you're saying, there's that mentor, whether it's your parents or relatives, who do show an interest or show you the
support,
world.
Yeah.
For example, do you think, well, you would still be going to those bazaars, but if something else was shown to you that it could also be a passion, because clearly you're very interested in, like you're saying, in reading history, politics.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just.
You think it could have gone the other way? You could have gone,
I could have, if I hadn't studied contemporary art, and I had known that I would have loved anthropology or history, I would have studied that.
Mm-hmm.
And but I don't regret it because now I can do it. I go
Of course not.
home.
You can do both. You are
Yeah,
doing both.
and I read because I'm really like seriously into history, and I read this. I take months to finish a book, but I love it, you know,
Mhm.
and I really delve into it, and I do, and that's why I'm glad, you know, I went through the art path
For sure.
because I can still do all my other, you know, interests
Mhm.
at home.
I admire in you that very much that you do so much reading and
No,
just like
thank you.
learning. It's very cool. But are you okay with the fact that it's become, I guess you could call it a hobby rather than it's a full-time job? Work?
You mean like
This-
my taste in history?
history,
and
yeah,
other
yeah.
yeah. I'm glad. I mean, I would never call myself a historian. Never. I mean, I don't have the
in a year?
preparation.
In a year.
May-
Next time you come back on this show,
Oh.
historian, artist.
Yeah, no, but I mean, I can't imagine myself living like without listening to a podcast of history or reading a history book. And whenever I want to go back and read fiction, I'm like, no, I'm gonna read this other historical book, and then go read something else after I finish it. But yeah, I always end up. But that's my thing, and I think
battle.
I think that's important. Like I think you should also have other interests other than
Definitely,
art.
yeah.
And it comes back, you know, it enriches your artwork. Like if you're into literature or poetry, I think you should delve into it even if you're an artist and dedicate some time because it will come back and enrich
Totally.
what you do.
I'm actually surprised that you don't do a lot of historic paintings. I've seen you paint at some, was it, I don't know if it was Aztec or Mayan temple. 'Cause
Oh,
you're
yeah, a
reading
while
on that.
back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like that popped up there, but do you try to keep those separate?
No,
No.
I don't know why I,
I don't
haven't
know why,
painted. I guess it's so
Is it
hard.
work? Is the work taking over
Yeah.
the time? So
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. I mean, right now I'm in like this speed painting period, I
Mhm.
guess you'd call it. You know,
They're looking cool. They're
they're-
looking also impressionistic. They look like a little bit of there's fine art flavor in there. I mean, I shouldn't use that. There's a physical oil medium reminiscence in your digital paintings.
and I love that. That's why I enjoy them so much because if I could choose like my favorite art styles, I would probably go with 19th century realism and impressionism. Because impressionism,
Good choice.
yeah, you know, you feel the brushstroke and you
Yeah.
feel the intention, and for me that's so cool, and that's why I really like your work because you
man.
can feel that in whenever you're even whatever medium you choose in watercolor, oil, digital. I can always see the gusto that you use when you're
Nice.
you know painting. You feel the brushstroke, you feel the intention, and I love that kind of work.
Thanks, man.
Whether I'm more technical, I appreciate technical drawings and
Mhm.
technical art, but my personal favorite is that
It's a movement.
brushstroke. Yeah, you
And
know?
I find it, in my opinion, I find it that kind of art becoming a lot more important, especially with the invention of photography, because now you can capture realism as realism, and of course there's different there's subtle exaggeration you can do in realistic painting. I feel like because there is photography exists, your image making now it doesn't have to, but once again, my opinion, it should lean farther away from photography and then turn into impressionism, but you can create impressions of real life in different ways. It doesn't have to be that style. But the reason
Yeah.
why I enjoy it is because you're trying to show something completely different that you're seeing that you can exaggerate in your painting, because then it
Yeah.
becomes its own thing. At least the way I look at it recently, that's my almost like rationale for it, to try to actually consciously push away from realism to try to show something completely different, because access to realism is I
Easy
mean, it's all
for
around
you,
you, and
yeah.
everyone has a camera on their phone now.
That's true. Yeah.
And that's not to take away from beautiful photography, but that's just kind of my thoughts on art creation.
Yeah, and that's why it's important to stand out, to
Mhm.
develop your own style.
Yes.
Even if you love realism like me,
Mhm.
you know, I think it's important to have that touch of yourself into.
And that's where
Your
skill
work.
comes from. So there's so much value in doing realism at a certain point of your art journey, and that's why I really like the artists, even though they may have ended up in the abstract or even contemporary art world, the ones who have gone through the classical
Training. Yeah.
classically, you know, whether it's Picasso, right? Or I mean, there's a lot of examples where to see the artist's journey and to have that background
Yeah.
it feels more legitimate. And it's once again opinion, but I really appreciate that skill, because to show light in a certain way or to exaggerate it and to make an impression of it, you have to really understand what.
How does it work?
Yeah, in
like,
real life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's like opera singers when they reach their a good skill level of
Mhm.
singing opera, they can just sing whatever they want. Any other style of singing will be easy for them,
interesting. Yeah.
So if I think it's important to develop those skills to the max,
Mhm.
or to as much as you can, not necessarily in realistic painting, but to know how to draw and to know how to paint, so you can then paint and draw whatever you want,
Mhm.
because you can break the rules or bend the rules however you want them.
Yeah. And
So skill is important for sure.
I'm sighing because I feel like I need to go home and just do more studies of that. It never
Yeah.
ends.
You
So-
should bring your tablet next time and
Yeah,
draw
I'm
while you
talking-
talk.
No,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna do that. I gotta respect the space.
Yeah, no, for sure.
And because your digital art even looks like it's, like I was saying, has this reminiscence of traditional painting, do you see yourself doing more traditional painting in the future?
Yeah, I really want to. I mean, I don't think I have enough space at my place.
Mhm.
My apartment is kind of tiny.
Welcome to Vancouver.
Yeah, I know, right? But I really want to get into oil painting,
Mm-hmm.
and I think there's a quality and a feel that oil painting has that you can't surpass it, even with the most amazing oil painting brushes in Photoshop. Or you can't.
Sure.
There's no.
Yeah.
It's never going to be the same. It's like people when cameras first started appearing and
Mhm.
when photography was invented, everyone thought painting is done. Painting will never happen again, and here we
Goodbye.
are.
The end,
I don't-
exactly.
Yeah, but that's not true, and we still have the most realistic photography, like you were saying, ever.
Yeah.
You have many photography styles, but we still go to galleries or art shows to see people paint, because that's not the purpose of painting is not just depicting reality
Mhm.
exactly as it is.
Yeah.
It's the artist depicts reality as they see it.
Yeah, and then
And that-
emotion and everything, all the layers on top of that.
Yeah. So you can't substitute.
And I guess
Painting.
the value of painting is even higher, especially like tangible physical paintings, as everything else is going digital.
Yeah.
I really feel that. I don't know if you experienced that.
And we also talked about this a couple of months ago, but in another context. I was suggesting the idea of, hey guys, what would happen if, like, in 5 years, concept artists and designers no longer exist, because everything is going to be made in 3D.
Mhm.
Like, we will never, or companies will never hire artists again.
Yeah.
And you and the other guys were like, nah, you're crazy, man. That's never going to happen. And I'm like, yeah, I hope so. Because I really hope that
It is scary. Yeah, it's probably.
I just don't want to learn Maya, man, or 3D programs. I just love painting.
AI
too
is
much.
gonna take over our jobs, man.
But I think our jobs will be the very last to go before the robots
Yeah,
take
I guess
over.
programming
you know?
creativity. It's like it must be similar to programming humor. I don't know if you read articles about how they're trying to teach AI to make jokes and it just doesn't
Oh
work.
yeah.
It's such a human thing, right? I think
Yeah.
creativity and art it's a very probably hard to describe, but I'm sure one day it's going to happen and we're all going to be
Yeah, but I think it's the last bastion where humans have their
probably
total
yeah.
control in that discipline. Our jobs will be the very last to go. I hope.
Maybe
as hard as
holding the fort
Yeah.
until the robots come down and kill us all.
But
make us
yeah, I mean,
slaves.
it was like that question between like a painting and photography. It
Mhm.
was like that similar question that I wanted to pose. Like, hey, one day it will be so easy to model something, and anyone will be able to do it. That artists will disappear, and you guys are like, no way, that's crazy. And
Well, I hope
don't
not.
think so.
I mean, there is now 3D printing of physical objects into the computer.
But
Meaning, like, we could 3D print, like, we could scan you, and then, but luckily, there's no like dinosaurs that exists or dragons. So it's not like you can scan a dragon and then put them in a computer. So at least there's still, you still have to create those. You know what I mean? Artists still have to create them.
Yeah, and for example, here's another question. Like, if we develop the 3D printing process to like something that can be done in the push of 2 buttons, literally,
Yeah.
do you think sculpture will disappear? Like manual sculpture that takes time, and an artist and making a sculpture of whatever. Do you think that'll disappear? I don't think so.
No, and it still hasn't.
I think it can probably even add more value to it because you know that a machine didn't do it.
Hopefully, but but even right now, it's quite funny to see the handmade, local sourced movement. The fact
Yeah.
that people now want to have the bag that was made by hands, while you would assume that once the factories came in, although, well, maybe not true because there's a lot of slave labor and all the way that comes with it. But maybe that's not a good example. But let's see, what would be like? People prefer handmade objects, even though they could be done for machines. Like the fact that there's even more appreciation now for handmade things because we're going either so.
Because you don't want
Sterile
the
almost,
yeah exactly
yeah,
you don't want
yeah.
the perfect
Yeah.
the exactly clear cut design or whatever. I mean, it depends on what you're
We're
getting.
humans.
Right?
We're weird. You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's also like, now I have so many books on my iPad, and I love to read from my
Mhm.
iPad because I can just change book in
Anything.
2 seconds and it just wastes nothing.
Mhm.
But people still don't read from their iPads or even Kindle. Yeah, it's a popular thing, but most people that
not the
read,
same.
yeah, they prefer the physical book, and it feels different. It's not about just getting the information from the book. It's the experience of sitting down and taking the time to
Mhm.
read, or have a cup of coffee. And
I wonder if the new generation is going to be different though, because I wonder. I don't know if it's true, but you've had books since you're young, and then it changed during your it changed. Let's say beyond your I don't know, maybe beyond your 20s. I don't know if you had an iPad or an object that you could read on. You know what I mean? So your nostalgia for a physical book is because most of your life that was your experience. I wonder if that's going to change.
well, I don't personally have anything against either books or iPads,
Mhm.
but I mean I read both. For me, it's the pleasure of reading is in getting the information up, but I also find pleasure in sitting down with a book, with a paper book. I think that it's like going, to a gallery and looking at an exhibition on landscape paintings or environment paintings.
Mhm.
Yeah, you can just go to the mountains, especially here in Vancouver, and just
Mhm.
look at the beautiful landscapes that we have.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
you still go to the gallery because you want to see the intention and you want to see the experience of the painting. And I
Mhm.
think it's the same with books and with sculpture. And I mean, you know what I mean?
That's very totally. I do. And with books, it's an abstract concept, but it's still it's in that vein. the way
Yeah,
you wanna
yeah,
experience
in
it
the
differently.
experience
Yeah.
of reading a paper book.
You keep running away for your questions, but 'cause I like how we start with pointer. No, but I really wanted to know. So you say you do want to do traditional painting. Is that part of that dream? Because I was asking you like the long-term
Oh,
art
right.
plan.
Yeah.
Would you abandon digital painting completely?
No.
Oh, so it's still that's
Yeah,
still gonna be
because
there.
I don't think I will. I'm too. It's so it allows me to do so many things so quickly.
Yeah.
And I love digital painting, but it's like the books on the iPad thing. I also love and appreciate oil painting and watercolor. Although I can't do watercolor like at all, man. I cannot.
I'm sure. I think it's
So,
gonna be easy
so
to pick it up for
difficult.
you.
You think? I don't know. It's just the water
Well,
part.
Yeah, sure.
It's so
Well,
hard
you-
to control.
You understand painting, but the control and the idea of letting go of control is also tricky. But
Yeah, I don't know. Every time that I've tried my hand of watercolor, it's just a miserable failure, and I don't show that to anyone. Just put them in the trash, whatever.
when are you gonna start posting those? You gotta do it.
Yeah, I got it. But yeah, I mean, in the long term, I would love to get back into the traditional
Mhm.
methods of painting for sure. And I think it reinforces your skills. It doesn't matter what medium you have. If you know how to paint, you know how to paint. If you don't know how to paint, then it doesn't matter how many cool brushes you have in Photoshop. You just
So
you
true, but we
can't
keep hoping. Like, man, but what if I get that pen
Yeah.
that Kim Jong Ji? Is that how you say his name?
Feng Su or
No,
who?
the other guy, the guy who just starts in one place and just starts drawing with like a marker, and he does giant drawings. Is it
Oh,
Kim? Is it
yeah.
Kim? I'm not sure. I'm probably not
I
saying
don't
his
remember
name.
his
right.
name, but
His
yeah.
last name is I think it's like G-I-G. I don't know.
Ooh, I
I'm
can't.
sorry.
I'm really bad with names, but yeah, I know who you're talking about. We will find out for you guys because we have no
Hopefully
idea.
one day.
Yeah.
I guess we spoke a little bit about this before, but you're saying how personal work feels a lot more satisfying to you, and it's hard to be satisfied with commercial work because it's never really what your vision is.
Yeah. I for me, when I go back home and I'm tired from painting 8 hours a day and I start painting, I relax.
Mhm.
I mean, it's still hard to because you're looking at a screen most of
Yeah.
the time, but I find freedom in that.
Mhm.
I don't have to necessarily listen to my art director because
Yeah.
he or
But-
she is not there. And yes, definitely, I love painting my own things, and every artist should have that time for themselves.
Is that why it's not satisfying enough? Because it is for someone else? Why do you think it's not?
I guess it depends on the project, you know. But in a way, yeah, sure. It's because you're being told what to paint instead of having. I mean, someone from the outside of this industry might think, "Oh, you guys paint for or draw for a living. That must be that's so creative." And you and I both know that it might not necessarily
Sometimes
be as
it's not
creative.
at
But
all.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's just like no, do this. It's clear cut. It's just cookie cutter design sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah.
Not
Very true.
every time, you know. Thankfully.
Luckily.
I mean, we do have a lot of leeway in certain projects to create as much as we want, but sometimes you have to just stick with a bad design or a bad idea, and you just have to soldier through it, you know. And it's hard. You just want to go back home and do your
Yeah.
own thing.
There must be so many stories about that.
Oh,
I don't know
I
if you go
bet.
online and read about bad clients, especially I think in like graphic design. It's hilarious.
Oh man, I know. I've read about this. Yeah, it's insane. Yeah, and the graphic designers just they're just burning inside. Like, no, that's not the right choice.
Yeah.
Why are you doing this?
Because for most people, it's such a mysterious field. I don't think people get it, and I gotta get a graphic designer in here just so we can chat about how frustrating it is to be.
Yeah, yeah. Ask them about Comic Sans and to explain that because we know we're in the industry and we know what it does to. Like they drill it to you in
Yeah.
school. It doesn't matter what you like. If you're going to art school, they tell you it's a sin to use Comic Sans. But then people who are not into the industry or
Love it.
artists, they're like, "But what's wrong with it? It's just a typography," and we're all like, "No, you're insane."
yeah. Everyone's going crazy.
Yeah, it's so funny.
Never. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think concept artists and designers probably have it easier than graphic designers. I really believe it.
You think? Oh, I
think
can't
so.
wait to listen to an episode
I
where
hope
you
so,
have
yeah.
a graphic designer here and see what they
we're
think.
just gonna spend the whole time talking about terrible clients. Yeah.
And Comic Sans.
I guess especially if you freelance too. If you're just
Oh,
picking a
yeah.
project here and there, and sometimes you have to pick it up. And
Yeah, because you have to eat.
yeah, have you done it?
A couple of times, but I haven't been a full freelancer, and I think it's hard. I think you have to be really skilled.
Gotta hustle.
Yeah,
find all
and to
the
stand
jobs.
out because
Yeah.
there's a lot of freelancers, and especially I think it's easier in some ways to be a freelancer now because you can freelance from Vancouver and work for a company or for a client in the UK or in wherever, anywhere in the world.
Mhm.
But then again, you are competing against absolutely everyone in the world because they can just pick whoever.
It's very scary.
You know?
Don't tell that to students. Right? That fear
Yeah.
coming out of school, and you're like, oh wait, now I have to compete with my teacher who's also freelancing. What?
Yeah, yeah, and it's and you do because you're entering the
Yeah.
market, so you have to measure up against those
This
guys.
art world, man, it's scary. What do you even do?
But it's
Just
also
don't think about it.
but it's also really good because you can go and ask other artists, and almost everyone will be like, "Oh yeah, you ask them, hey, how do you do this? How you're so good?" Or how. That's why those guys at Level Up.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about this in this previous.
Level Up. People look it up.
Yeah, and-
YouTube, I guess, probably the best way to find it.
And they have their own website
Yeah.
called Fusroda,
Oh, yeah,
like
spell
the
that.
Skyrim thing. But yeah, those guys are awesome. Every time that they bring an artist,
Mm-hmm.
every artist I've watched in their YouTube channel answers questions with no problem. Like they might get questions like, hey, how do you render it this way, or how do you create a sheen in the specific type of style, and they will always answer. They will say, oh, I'll do this. They don't care about sharing that knowledge.
Mhm.
I think that's amazing of our community. And I think that's very specific to our industry and to the arts, because maybe in other industries the competitiveness is way more aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, we have to compete with those guys that are doing beautiful paintings, but you can always go ask them, hey, how do you do this? Hey, can you show me, your secrets?
Yeah, you're right. At least they'll tell you.
I don't know if it's the same thing if you're a lawyer, like,
If they're willing to share their secrets.
Yeah.
This is how you do. Oh yeah, I wonder. Yeah.
in other industries, he might be way more aggressive and like
Yeah.
cutthroat.
You're right. Yeah, Level Up. That's another space for artists, and I think you don't have to be in the entertainment field to watch it to learn.
Yeah,
That's the cool thing about the visual art in general, is that you can draw from these different avenues.
yeah,
But
definitely.
yeah, that channel is very good.
Yeah, and
Quality knowledge, yeah.
and they show artists that do their thing a very strict way.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about Peter Morbacher, I think
Yeah.
he's called. and he does his things in a very, very particular way. I think he only uses the round brush, which is insane because his rendering is perfect. And I'm like,
Old school.
Yeah, old school.
Probably works with the mouse too.
Yeah, I know.
Like
And some
style.
people do. Yeah, it's crazy. But then, and you learn from his very strict ways and his very disciplined ways. And then you find artists that are, I just paint whenever I want and whenever I feel like it. And if I just want to paint 5 minutes a day, I just do it. And they're really good, but they just do what they want. And there's like, you would think that there's no discipline to it, but they have their own way of creating art.
Isn't that always frustrating though when artists like, how do you do this? I just sit and I just start drawing. What?
Yeah.
Do you use reference? No.
No.
What?
Yeah. How do you do
So how do you do it? Well, I just sit down and start drawing. It's have you ever looked up? Here's another name, Marko Djurjevic. I don't know how to spell. If you want to see his art, I think he's got a company called One More Vodka.
I don't know his company, but I know of him.
Yeah, but I remember watching some tutorials by him, and it's just him starting with an eye, draws the head, draws the butt, and there's no. I mean, that is the process, but it's the most frustrating process because it's really hard to learn.
Yeah, and then suddenly, boom, art.
Yeah,
It's like an amazing piece of art.
That's all those internet memes. Start with a circle, then you got yourself a painting.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I know. But I mean, it's also hard to because if someone who's just starting would ask you, "Hey, Ilya, how do you do this amazing painting? Like an hour or like 5 minutes? How do you do it?" It's like, I don't know. I just paint because it's so hard to tell them that it's just practice. Yeah, if you practice, you learn of your own mistakes, and you listen to other artists. But if you want to get better, the only way to get better is to paint. And
Of course.
I took an online course once, and my prof would say, to get to the good drawings and the good paintings, you have to draw and paint all those bad drawings that you have,
first,
inside of you. And once you're done, they're out of your system, then you can start doing the good ones.
When do you know?
Yeah, exactly. When you start getting when you start
sucks.
changing. Yeah, but every year if you check your portfolio and you say, "Oh wow, I improved."
Hopefully.
Yeah,
That's my fear.
Yeah.
Looking back and be like, what? I was better?
Yeah. I don't think that will ever happen to you, man.
Hopefully I don't stop. That's what I was talking about earlier, like changing directions. That's so scary because you will look back and be like, well, now I'm doing something new and like it sucks. Yeah, and it just doesn't compare to the art in the past.
Yeah, it's that is also a fear of mine of like being shoot, I was way better last year. Oh man, I would just stop, I'm
But you're trying to explain to someone how you achieve a painting, unless you really think about it. Yeah, it's very hard to explain.
Yeah, because first it's natural the way we paint, obviously. Because you just sometimes you don't think, you just do. You go with your gut feeling.
I try to have a structure, so unlike the artist I was describing, we just starts in one spot. I think there's some sort of basics that I follow.
Sure,
but it often seems like as artists have a lot more experience, they abandon those. They're not crutches. They're base work just because they can start doing it. I don't know if you know Mike Matesi.
No, I don't know.
His has a live drawing book called Force, but he teaches you to start with a line of action, do anchors, show like the hip joints and weight. So he teaches your process, but when you watch him draw, he just doesn't do it at all. He just draws amazing, but I think it is because he's done so much of this that now he doesn't have to follow even his own process because he's so far along on it.
Yeah, and I think we should learn from those guys that know how to explain how to do the process.
Totally, because a lot of people can't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, they can do beautiful work. It's like finding a professional that is an excellent biologist, but he can't teach biology or whatever subject he's an expert in. And those people are very valuable. I found a book called The Art of Color and Light. You probably know it. By the guy who... Yeah.
James Gurney?
Yes.
Yeah.
And he did Dinotopia. And he explains it so well. And then you're like, oh, yeah, that's how light behaves when it's night. It's so obvious, But he makes it sound so like, duh, how did you not know this, But then you're like, oh, yeah, it's so hard to explain. Now, how to explain how the moonlight behaves? Hell, I don't know. I just paint what I see. But that guy explains it to you, like, this is how it works.
Yeah. That's when you realize how important it is to have a person who's actually a really good teacher, apart from being a really good artist. And it's like you're saying, it's so valuable.
Yeah.
It's that book, and then Alla Prima by Richard Schmidt.
Oh, yeah.
Two Bibles.
Also, Framed Ink.
Yes.
Framed Ink, good. Especially if you want to do comic books. Or
not even. It doesn't actually.
No.
So the books we're talking about, doesn't matter what kind of art you like. Just,
For sure.
just get them.
I agree. Yeah.
There's so much learning that applies to anything, whether it's cinematics or just
Yeah.
paintings, composition, and
Composition.
shapes.
Yeah, that guy for composition is like a master. It's like, wow, it's just like 3 shapes, and you're telling an entire story. It's amazing, and you learn so much because they know how to explain their own process, which is perfected. You know.
And one thing I keep hearing, and I think it will be curious, that when you teach, you get better by the fact that you're teaching, and then you have to explain it.
Yeah.
So that's why.
Oh,
like,
yeah,
do you think you would do it?
Oh yeah,
Especially
I'd
with-
love to be a teacher, but to be a teacher, you have to be good.
Well, you're good, but that's actually feels like a way of giving back.
Yeah,
That's probably gonna
yeah,
be a really
you're
good way.
right. Yeah, I think.
We got it.
Yeah.
Now let's get really good.
And
then-
everyone becomes teachers.
Well, actually, we'll find out if we're good teachers or not. Maybe we can when explain it.
Yeah, it's
Start
hard.
with a stick, and then you have a robot.
But it's also, I think it's also a skill that you need to develop if you want to be an art director. I mean,
Yeah.
you don't necessarily want to teach while you're being an art director, but you have to know how to communicate ideas and how to say, no, you don't have to render it or draw this way. You have to draw it this other way. And you give the example. And then you tell your team, like, hey, okay, do it.
Yeah.
Now I've told you how we want it to look, but you develop it and you do your own thing.
It's such a mysterious skill because
Yeah.
like having a good art director is so crucial, but
Yes. But it's so
it's
hard
a
to do. You
mysterious.
gotta-
There's so much that goes into it that you don't even see.
yeah.
Uh,
That's why I kind of give the.
would you want to do it?
Being an art director?
Yeah.
Oh, definitely. Yes, I would. And then this is something that a lot of people, I think, I've heard that want to do, and then when they're doing it, when they become an art directors, they regret it so much because they spend so much time in meetings, and they're like, I thought I was going to be drawing a lot, and I think that's something that should be pointed out if you want to become an art director. I mean, I've never been.
Yeah.
I would love to, and I don't mind spending a lot of time in meetings or just doing revisions or marking in red what
Yeah.
you want your artist to change, because your role is no longer that of just a precise artist. It's one of like leading your team into a certain look.
Shout out to Kevin for
Yeah.
leading us really well. Our
Yeah,
art
he
director at
does.
Atomic.
Yeah.
So good.
And
yeah.
and I think he sometimes also feels the need to just want to do it yourself.
Yeah.
Especially, when you're like, oh man, this guy's not getting it. Okay, but I'm gonna do it because this is exactly the way. And I feel I totally understand. And I think that's a struggle that a lot of art directors.
Oh, for
might
sure, and
have.
that's especially when you get into it as an artist. I mean, being like a designer, someone who creates, and getting into the position, at least from the distance, the art directors that I've met, it does seem like a struggle. You have to understand or commit to the fact that now your responsibilities are so much bigger that the opportunity to create is not
Yeah.
as large.
Yeah.
But having said that, I don't know if you've looked at Art of Rabbit Disney movie, Zootopia.
Yeah.
The art director on that, the environment artist, he posted so much work. Like I wonder if Disney just does it in some magical way. But that guy drew so much, and he's crazy good.
I don't have the book.
Matthias, I don't know what his name. I can send you the link.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't have the book, but I've seen his work, and yeah, the book is pretty
Yeah.
full of art. Like they did so much work for that.
So I wonder if there's this happy medium. I wonder if some companies actually manage to allow their art director to create.
Yeah,
That's the condition. I feel like if one day I do end up doing that, and I think it would be interesting, I would love to maintain at least a little bit of time for actually creating myself. I can't let that go. I don't think I can.
No, I don't think I could either. I mean, and I'm sure you as an art director have a little bit of space between meetings, and
You do it on meetings. Right?
yeah, but that's why it's so important to keep going back home and drawing,
Yeah.
because you just
if
have
you have
to do
time,
your
but then
own
if you
thing.
don't, if you have kids, and then that's tough.
Yeah, man, life gets in the way. It's crazy.
Come on, life. Give us
Give us
more
a break.
room for give us a break for art.
Yeah.
Like a long break.
Yeah, but you have. I think it's so necessary to do your own thing,
Yeah.
and even if you have kids and are an art director.
Once again, it's like you gotta feed the soul.
Yeah.
Lately, I've been using that, but it really feels like it, and I know it seems a little
But cheesy. No, but
cheesy. Yeah.
yeah,
that-
but
I actually
it's
feel
so
it.
true.
It's so true.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's necessary.
All right, man. So I want to get into some recurring questions that I want to try to do every show.
Cool.
And
Yeah, let's do
I
it.
imagine I'll be probably switching them up, but to me, this is really just like me being curious about these.
Yeah.
Hopefully, they're not just too big of questions with too many open ends. But we may have touched on it a little bit. But do you see yourself ever, or can you see yourself not creating art? Is it possible? Can you be
Like in the future, you mean?
or just do you think you could be happy and not create?
Oh man, I don't know, because especially if you do it so much throughout the day and your week, it defines who you are. I don't think. Yeah, like for example, when my dad asks me, "Hey, do you have a plan for when you retire? Like, what are you? Have you thought about this? Like, like, you have to
What's
save money."
retirement?
Yeah, I think. Oh, sure, you have to save for your retirement, but I don't think I'll ever stop painting.
Yeah.
And if I ever stop working in the industry, yeah, I'm just gonna go back home and paint.
I love that.
In my
Yeah.
senior's home. Just
You're gonna be the best.
yeah.
Like
Hopefully, man.
so many years of painting. Yeah, hopefully you're right.
Impress all those grannies.
And by and by then they're gonna invent. Well, they already have like artificial retinas. So your eyesight, even if it goes bad, they can just replace it and then they pay for procedure. Because that's to me,
Yeah.
that's kind of scary. Like
Oh,
losing your
yeah.
eyesight.
Oh man, I hadn't thought of that.
In the
Man.
future, and then they'll replace our wrists if our wrists hurt, and just like a robotic wrist.
Oh man. I'm so glad we're living in these times.
yeah. Take an art pill.
Yeah. No, but for sure, I don't think. I mean, unless they cut my hands and make
let
me
them.
blind. Sure, I don't think I'll ever stop
What
painting.
what kind of hell is this?
Yeah. Would you?
Would I stop? Oh,
Yeah.
no, I just would be a sad person. I don't know. I don't. I
Yeah, I don't-
can't see it.
I
It
think
would have to be some sort of. I would love, if not, music would be fun. But I really like visual art. I almost don't want to consider this question. It's too
yeah,
scary.
I know, right? I know.
Yeah. Okay. Let's keep going to the next one. And this is actually, well, because here the question is, if there's no right way to make art, and art being on a broad scale, just the fact that, we talked about there's so many different art movements and types, it feels like, it's not that there's the right direction. There's only whatever you prefer. So if there's no right way to make art, what criteria would you judge yourself by, and do you maintain any rules for yourself? Because like especially when you go home and paint, like you could do whatever you want. You
Yeah,
could
that's
draw
true.
sticks, but like how do you judge yourself?
I think intellectually, you have to be as cultured as possible if you want to be a well-rounded artist.
Mhm.
And I'm talking really intellectually.
Mhm.
I think for me, I have to read about as many topics as I can. I'm interested in like we said, anthropology and history, but if I can get my hands on a really interesting psychology article, I will, even if it doesn't directly influence my art, but it will influence my intellectual thought.
Mhm.
So, and I think that's very important if you want to be the kind of artist that is an intellectual.
Is that how you judge yourself then? Like
In that sense, yes. But I also think that, as we said, that that skill is super important. So when I go back home and I have no idea what to paint, and I don't have like a concise idea of a character or an environment, I just do studies, because I know studies will help me improve my technique and my skills.
It's
so
really nice to have that criteria, right? I really,
yeah.
That's
and,
what I was,
and there's always crutches. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, there's always crutches that you can pick up, and that even if sure, art is very subjective. Okay, yeah, but if you want to draw a very particular way, or if you want to improve drawing, then you have to consider that you might have crutches, or that you might be doing something wrong, or that there's a better way to do ellipses or whatever. Do you?
crutches. Do I?
I just bounce the questions to you, because I just
Keep it going. Like art criteria.
it's hard.
It is very tough.
difficult.
I think just look at other people and compare, which is not good because it hurts, but you still
But then you have a point of reference.
totally. So I guess like seeing where you want to go and try to go there.
Yeah.
The problem is that if you want to go many directions, which is
Yeah.
me, you just don't know where to go at all. Ugh. We can get into that later. All right, let's give it. We got two more. What advice would you give a younger self around the time you were making up your mind to pursue an art career?
So if they don't know if they want to do it.
like what advice would you give yourself?
Oh, myself?
Yeah. Or what would you tell yourself? Like
If I could travel in time and talk to myself, like, sure, do art and study, but study history. That's what I tell myself. But you know what? Like if you really want to get into art, and depends on what you want to do. If you want to do contemporary art, then sure, go into a contemporary art school and read like crazy. I think for contemporary artists especially, they need to read more than they do. But if you want to be a skilled artist, like and become a master eventually, there's not enough studies that you can make. and
Yeah.
studies from life and get better at drawing and try different mediums and get out of your bubble. And if you're really good painting environments, then go paint a human figure, skeleton, muscle, all that. Man, I'm telling this because I need to do this myself.
I was going to say, but when
You
did you
know?
learn that?
When did I learn?
Well, the fact
doing
that you know, because you're doing it now, so that's pretty cool. That I guess, yeah, the advice you'd give yourself is something that you're telling that yourself already. You know what I mean?
I think I learned that even after school because
Okay.
since I went to a contemporary art school, no one really trained me to be a painter or a drawer. Drawer, I don't know if that's the word. But no one really trained me, so they would tell me. There was no one to tell me, no, study from life, grab a model, go to figure drawing classes or events, which is something that I should really do. I mean, I cheat. I just do the figure drawing thing on the internet, and
it's also good. I know it's not the best, but
but if you really want to,
gotta go
do
to live
figure drawing, you have to,
always. Actually, I think that's every artist will tell you if you ask them. Everyone will say they never do enough, or that's something that.
But that's the best
such a
attitude.
consistent. Yeah, it's really good attitude, definitely.
Because it makes you keep doing it.
Yeah.
And it's so important to never be satisfied with your art. I think I know it's masochistic, but never be satisfied, because the moment you are like, yes, I'm happy with this, that's the moment you stop improving, and you don't want to stop
Give
improving.
people some happiness, man. Okay, for an hour you can be happy. Give yourself an hour, feel very good, and then go back to hating it.
But do you know an artist that is like looks at his own work and he's like, man, I love my art. Like, I look at this stuff in my Instagram
Well, that's because
feed.
we're artists. We just hate ourselves.
But that's yes, but that's I think that's good because it makes you improve. It
totally
forces you to be better.
Okay, and the last and annoying question probably: why do you create art?
Oh man, I think we spoke about this already, Ilya. Come on.
Oh man, I'm
No,
sorry.
I don't know. No, I just messing with you, man.
Did we?
No, I mean, why do we do it? Because we I mean,
Oh, yeah,
could
you're
you
right, yeah,
imagine
yeah.
yourself not like?
Yeah,
If
that's
you-
no, you're right.
I don't know, man. Like, because you have to.
But I feel like it's become part of my personality. I think.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
defines you.
What,
Imagine, I don't know. Imagine you can go back to every culture that has ever existed, and they all have some sort of visual expression.
Mhm.
Every tribe in human history has had their own way to express themselves visually
Mhm.
or sculpturally or whatever. You find that in every single culture. You can't be a human and not be an artist. Even though human beings
Yeah.
are by nature engineers and solve problems
Mhm.
and engineer tools to make their lives better, we still have that aspect of art, of expression,
Yeah, maybe it's not of an artist, but like being a creative person, because like it's a creativity that you can find in many aspects of.
Yeah, and
being
even
human.
yeah, I think it's part of the human nature. But also, even if you're not an artist yourself, there's sometimes where you look at a picture and you enjoy the just the picture, the
Mhm.
aesthetics,
Yeah.
or look at a painting or a sculpture, and even if you're not an artist, I think everyone has the ability to appreciate art. Maybe I'm wrong.
So
Maybe
deep.
there's someone.
So deep, I love it, and I guess that's why you got to keep creating.
Yeah, I don't know.
Ah, Jose,
It's so hard.
what a
man.
good note. I think this is a pretty good time to.
Yeah.
I think if we leave it on that, some knowledge, just dropping knowledge on everyone. So good.
I hope so. I
Man.
hope they don't hate us.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess I'll have to say, contemporary artists, hit us up and teach us why we're wrong. I guess.
Yell at us.
Yeah.
I don't care.
We're not haters. We just want to learn.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
So
That's the best
yeah, I guess
attitude.
please reach out to me. Do you want to, dude? I really appreciate. By the way, I really appreciate you coming
Man,
on the show and
it's an honor.
doing the chat.
Really, like, I'm really honored that I was here.
I'm
this
really
is
pumped
amazing.
about this. Thanks, man. And you'll have to get back, and I think I guess we can track your progress and see what kind of thoughts you have.
Oh, I'd love to. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
we'll I guess tell people how they can find you.
Oh yeah. So I'm in ArtStation.
Mhm.
So if you search José Arias on ArtStation, you'll find me.
Look up the awesome art. Look it up.
Instagram. Yeah.
G.I. Jose.
Jose with a Z.
Nice. Okay.
The other one was taken. And yeah, just add me on Facebook. I'm friendly.
Dude, so good. I'm so excited for this. I really, yeah.
This
Ooh,
was awesome,
that
man.
loud. Yeah, it was fun. Hopefully people listening, you enjoyed this, and
Yeah, we should spread the word.
yeah, gotta spread the word. So yeah, I appreciate you listening. If you have any thoughts, if you're a contemporary artist, or you wanna talk to me, reach to us on Facebook, Instagram, probably Twitter one day. Creative Theory Podcast. Thanks to GQ for this song, and we used it as intro song. Thanks to David T Music for mixing. That was cool. And hopefully we'll be back. Tune in next week for Snackcast. There's going to be Sundays 2 to 4 o'clock. We're alternating, so I'll be on every second week. And I appreciate you all. Jose and I are going to get into party mode, listen to some crazy music. Once again, thanks GQ.
Thanks, my friend.
And talk to you all later. Bye-bye.